What's happening, folks? This is Nima Moridi, and I got my good buddy, my childhood good buddy, Shayan Mohammadi, on the call today. So Shayan is an attorney. He got his JD from Western, down south, Western University. He has an extensive amount of crypto experience. He and I go back to the 90s. Both of our parents were in the real estate space, and we went to the same Taekwondo Academy, Ernie West West Coast Taekwondo in Santa Clara, California. So I'm so happy to have Shayan on the call today. Shayan, I'm so grateful that you were able to make it. Before we start this interview, I did want to point out that none of this is legal or financial advice. It's two buddies just chatting. I wanted to kind of get his take on today's market and how the crypto space is working. So, Shayan, my first question to you: how did you get interested in crypto, specifically Ethereum? Because I noticed your username, your handle is Shayan ETH. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Cheyenne.eth. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another one of the great areas that Ethereum is moving towards, where we can also disrupt the domain technology when it comes to having a registered address as your wallet for Ethereum versus having a registered address as a .com connection for your website and your server. But I appreciate it. I like you just said, I wanted to also remind folks, none of this is financial advice. None of this is legal advice. None of this is real estate advice. We're just having a conversation. Just my opinions as a JD as well. So kind of got interested in the intersection of finance and technology when I was in law school. And from then on, moved on to realize that there's been a peer-to-peer cryptocurrency system. And so around late 2016, early 2017, I got into it personally as just a personal investor, but then realized shortly after that crypto winter in early 2018, a lot of the great uses that can be forthcoming in it.
Wow. Okay. So you've been in it since 2016.
Yeah, late 2016.
Nice. Okay. So I always joked around about it from like 2019 on, full transparency. Like I would see the ATM machine at Valley Fair, and I would joke around, like when my wife was like, "Hey, I want to go buy this," I'm like, "I'll give you some money in crypto. How's that?" Or like, do you accept Bitcoin?" It was more of like a joke, you know what I mean? And then once I started seeing it actually taking off more and more during the pandemic, that's really what I was like, you know what, this is not a joke. Like I just thought it was going to be a fad where it was going to come and go. Apparently, this launched in 2009. I recently got my crypto certification in the real estate space through somebody who I wanted to get to. But because I really see it as something that it's here to stay. I looked at a Redfin estimate from last year about how buyers had been liquidating reserves and assets for the down payment for the home, and crypto was 12% of buyers. 12% of buyers liquidated cryptocurrency for the down payment. So I said, you know what? This is something big. This is going to be around, and I wanted to make sure that I as Wayne Gretzky says, I like to skate where the puck's going to be, not where it is. So I'm trying to get ahead of the game and learn a little bit more about how the space is evolving. So I think that's awesome how you've been around it for that long. I mean, you have a lot of knowledge about this. How did you get in touch or actually get connected with Natalie, the CEO of Propi?
Yeah, so Propi is revolutionizing and disrupting the real estate game right now. They're able to sell homes as NFTs. There are fungible tokens, right? But beyond the fungible token, on the flip side is the non-fungible token. And with that, we see a lot of the Ethereum technology, the smart contract technology. So it might hold value inside the code of the NFT itself, the non-fungible token, to execute a smart contract. But at the end of the day, it's different compared to, let's say, a Bitcoin or a Litecoin or one coin of Ethereum, right? Or one Ethereum rather. And so Propi has really honed in on this intersection of real estate and tech and crypto, where they're able to sell homes through NFTs and NFT sales and through NFT marketplaces. And so that's going to totally disrupt the game. I think it's also going to disrupt the game when it comes to smart contracts and deed recording, mortgage collateral. When you look at how counties are running their systems for titles right now, it's, pardon my French, it's a shit show at times, depending on like the county. I mean, we're lucky we're here in Silicon Valley in Santa Clara County, but there are counties, extremely north of California, extremely south of California, and on the border, where their counties might not have the resources to do this sort of thing. And so having it on the blockchain through smart contract technology is going to be really revolutionizing and making sure people are on the same page with titles and such. And so because of our background as well, Nima, our families, like you briefly mentioned at the beginning, before you even got your real estate license and before I even went and got my JD in law school, we've been helping our families in the real estate game since mid to late 90s to early 2000s. And so, you know, being in that community, we've been interested in seeing what the future technology of this is. And so just the same way you heard about Proppy is similar to how I heard about Proppy. And Natalie started following me, just started spitting ideas back and forth and staying in contact with her. And she actually held a contest that I entered for one of the similar certificate courses. And my comment got like 200 likes on her post. And it was about, our families coming together and making sure that the real estate game is dominated, and using that inspiration and that technology to further disrupt it has been interesting. And so use that, and was happy to be in the course with her, and really happy to have been able to spitball some NFT strategy with her for their upcoming avatar release. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and feel free to jump in if I've missed anything here. But after getting that certification, from what it seems like is they'll take a house, right? The seller will put that house into an LLC that I believe is based in Delaware. And you can, because NFTs are only accessible through Ethereum, right? Not Bitcoin, but Ethereum has the technology to be able to do something like that. So that LLC is converted then into an NFT, sorry for the acronyms, which then somebody can bid on and purchase coins with today's value. And then those Ethereum coins, correct me if I'm wrong, are transferred into US dollars, US currency, and you're essentially paying cash for the property. Is that accurate?
Yeah, well, I know that the LLC holding and the shell of it has been kind of a transitionary phase. In the future, 3 to 5 years down the line, especially with the Ethereum upgrade coming shortly, you're going to be able to take a lot of the middle corporate man out of it. For now, it's a sure bet way to make sure it's recorded correctly, make sure that the transaction is legal. But in 3 to 5 years, like I said, you won't even need that corporate shell. But as of right now, that is a vehicle they've been using. But the main technology of it and the main way the transaction has been occurring has been through this NFT sale. And so, when it comes to fiat currency and converting that to any cryptocurrency, there's a wide array of choices that you can have: alternative coins, Bitcoin, Litecoin, but not all of them have that smart contract technology, like you said. And so for now, it's mostly Ethereum, but you're having companies and startups like Solana Labs coming out with their own smart contract technology as well. Litecoin just announced a fork that they're going to be doing as well for smart contract technology. Bitcoin actually on their last fork or last upgrade just initiated the smart contract technology as well. And so the fiat currency or the fiat conversion to cryptocurrency is going to have a lot more options in the future as well when it comes to smart contract tokens. As well as, like I said, the corporate shell will most likely not be needed in the next 3 to 5 years. And so we're seeing the transitionary phase right now with, a Proppy sale as an NFT, and how that's working now in 2022, and also 2020 and 2021 when they did it, versus how it's going to be 3 to 5 years from now.
Whoa, man. So it's still revolutionizing. Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that about Bitcoin.
It's still evolving. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
still evolving.
Well, speaking of Bitcoin, what are your thoughts about the tender currency of the country of El Salvador? I see the president is super bullish on Bitcoin. I've seen him when Bitcoin was dropping a few months ago. He was tweeting, "Buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip." He was like, he's really big on this. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, President Nayib, he's definitely an interesting guy. He actually, when you mentioned buy the dip tweets, he was also tweeting himself in a McDonald's uniform, because people were giving it's kind of, not to make it sound derogatory, McDonald's workers are great. They are very successful people as well. But I guess a cryptocurrency joke in the community is that when crypto goes down, we can always get jobs at McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King. And so he kind of lived up to that joke because they've been in the news so much after making Bitcoin legal tender, that when it sank in the beginning of the new year, because of market woes and a lot of issues with Ukraine and such, and miners being there. But when it sank, he posted a picture of himself photoshopped inside a McDonald's uniform, and he was just kind of living up to it. And actually, it paid off. I mean, the
Yeah.
country's doing well. They're getting a big yield on their Bitcoin holdings, actually, and that yield is going back into the pockets of middle class families through various policies that President Nayib is doing out there. So there are now other countries that are starting to take that route. As you saw, President Joe Biden last week or 2 weeks ago, within the last couple of weeks, did the crypto executive order. A lot of people were scared about that as well, but actually it's building more on what countries are arguing or debating about when it comes to legal tender. President Biden mentioned that we should look into stablecoins and see what the policing ramifications or supporting ramifications would be for having a USD stablecoin. And so that would compete with countries like China, where they have the digital yuan, which came out in full force during the last Olympics. And they have their own issues, privacy issues with it. But if we can, build on top of our own foundational freedoms and have our own fiat or stable coin, USD stablecoin, and so that could put us on the same competitive edge as a lot of other countries that are doing this. And there are some European countries trying to take the legal tender idea up, like El Salvador did. So it's definitely promising. You can't always trust the government to do the right thing in these situations when it comes to disruptive technology. There's a new show called Super Pumped out now about the formative years of Uber, and it was based on the book Super Pumped. And we saw a lot of San Francisco municipal authorities coming out against Uber early on because of their extensive ties to unions, which are cabbies as well, and older style transportation methods. And we can always see similar fights with disruptive technology. So maybe back then it was peer-to-peer riding, peer-to-peer gig working. Now it's cryptocurrency, ICOs, initial coin offerings, which are like IPOs, NFTs, seeing new IRS rules when it comes to that. I mean, I'm filing my taxes right now, and there's a couple new forms for crypto. And so it's constantly evolving. Hopefully government will remain on the positive side of it. I have hope in that executive order that President Biden signed. I'm seeing Miami doing really well as a crypto hub, and their mayor really stepping it up like El Salvador's president is doing. And so it's interesting to see international policy when it comes to this, and hopefully governments will remain on the right side of history on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've seen President Zelensky of Ukraine, right? And I mean, none of us can ignore all those crypto donations that have been flooding into Ukraine over the past few weeks. So it definitely has real world, right, effects. And I totally agree with you. There's that joke, right, about like, if you want to see how bad government agencies work, you just got to step into the DMV, let's say pre-COVID, because I know they've come out with some great, new updates now. COVID, unfortunately, had to make them pivot. I mean, I should say fortunately, because for us, it made it a lot easier. But,
yeah, just to touch on that, you mentioned the DMV, and our current governor, Gavin Newsom, a lot of his previous policy measures were to bring in more private-public partnerships to fix departments like the DMV, who, you don't have to be a genius or policy expert. You just have to be a normal Californian to notice the DMV sucks. The system's outdated. Yeah. And so Governor Newsom previously, I don't know what his current position is on it. I think he probably still secretly believes it, but isn't public about it. But using private enterprise and private public options or private companies to be able to help come in and work with the government and start making serious upgrades to the DMV and the way that we access the DMV. And you did mention COVID kind of put that in a fast forward situation, and you can do a lot of your renewals online now through the DMV website. But I think it's important to beyond just whether it's the DMV or cryptocurrency or stable coins, but to really hone in on these private public partnerships, because California, man, Silicon Valley, I mean, this is the home of Silicon Valley. And so we have no excuses to be behind when it comes to disruptive technology and the way that it interacts with us and our government. And so that was a lot of talk about DMV upgrades when it comes to private-public partnerships. So I hope that we can continue in that realm, but be wise about not handing over integral government functions to private entities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're the cradle of innovation, right? I mean, you want to lead by example. And I think that, generally speaking, from what I've noticed, the private sector has a good opportunity to get in there and show them how to optimize their operations. Because at the end of the day, I feel like it'll save them money, it'll save consumers time. It's a win-win. Now, Cheyenne, I wanted to pivot a little bit into virtual land and metaverse. Me,
Mm,
obviously, as you know, being a real estate agent, we have this joke amongst a few crypto enthusiast agents like myself, where we say that the housing market is so rough. There's such limited inventory that folks rather buy in the metaverse than the real verse, as we call it. And most recently, watching that CNBC update where somebody spent $500,000 to be Snoop Dogg's neighbor of his mansion. I
in
want to hear.
Sandbox.
Yeah, Sandbox. There you go. And I think
Mhm,
there's like Decentraland, I believe, where you can rent out a commercial space, and
mhm.
I think it was like Paris Hilton or someone else had like a DJ party, and folks were coming by. So, can you talk a little bit more on that, and also maybe about like some of the rights, right, the property rights? Because like I know I have knowledge of that here, right, when with respect to litigation, but what happens in the metaverse?
Yeah, and so when I was getting my JD, I had the convenience of getting 400 years of property law in my property law course. Yeah, codified property law, right? So I'm just saying that we've had several hundreds of years of backing on this of judicial precedent and of policy when it comes to real property, but a lot of those concepts do transfer over, but aren't necessarily policy of these virtual plots of land in the metaverse. But the way that I like to describe it is, people like to hate on the metaverse because they just think it's like a crypto scam or what may you. But the idea of virtual reality is what it's truly based on. And we'll talk about augmented reality later on as well. But the virtual reality aspect is what I view it as. And I think, as you previously mentioned, COVID kind of fast forwarded a lot of this. We're on Zoom right now, and Zoom is a form of virtual reality and a form of metaverse, two-dimensional, right? And so when we bring in the three-dimensional aspect into virtual reality, that's when the metaverse comes in. And so this term, the metaverse as well, could really be rooted within the idea of digital scarcity. And that's where they bring in the cryptocurrency aspect. And so when you own an NFT, that is a permanent position on the Ethereum blockchain. And so that's going to be able to have, cross-chain access. There isn't just one blockchain, right? There's multiple blockchains. And so a lot of companies now working on connecting, making those blockchains interoperable. But when you own an NFT, it's a permanent position on, let's say, the Ethereum blockchain, for example. So when you have that permanent position, something the internet hadn't had before. I mean, yes, maybe you may have had .com addresses, but images, documents, what may you, a lot of what that was in Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 was that it was open. There isn't one permanent aspect of it. The good thing about cryptocurrency and blockchain, that's made it permanent. And so when you buy a virtual plot of land, for example, or an NFT of, let's say, Stephen Curry's three-pointer record sneakers, which they were on sale through his crypto organization, you're able to use those in the metaverse, and those are going to have a permanent fixed position on the blockchain.
Mhm.
Also, obviously a Warriors fan, so hence the Steph Curry example. But using that permanent position, you get to really live your life in the virtual reality world and keep your things with you. And I know Mark Zuckerberg has been talking about this a lot. They recently changed the name of Facebook's parent company to Meta. They're really focusing on moving into the metaverse and NFT space. And he's been talking also about being able to take your things with you, aka your NFTs, your personal belongings that are going to have a permanent fixed position in the blockchain. And so they will remain yours. You're going to be able to use them through various platforms and through various metaverses. And for instance, use the Sandbox example with Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg has bought a virtual estate, a bunch of plots of land in Sandbox, which is one of the big three metaverse companies. Decentraland is another one that we'll talk about as well. When someone is buying a virtual plot of land next to Snoop Dogg, they're buying that NFT as a permanent position on the blockchain. And so moving into Web 3.0 and Web 4.0 symbiosis, you're not going to be able to, as the joke says, right click and save and call that your NFT. There has to be a specific contract address attributed to the blockchain. And so the results are going to be endless. I mean, you're going to have events like you mentioned, you know, DJs having events in Decentraland, real estate companies and law firms opening up buildings in Decentraland and Sandbox. Yeah, and so having that permanent fixed basis is going to be able to create a world where you're going to have digital ownership, and the idea of digital scarcity has been solved by having cryptocurrency and the smart contract technology and non-fungible tokens, aka NFTs, to exist and help us move into that world. And, you know, for instance, people complain saying that, oh, you know, it's a scam and whatnot. But I really think that as a lot of the main companies that we're used to, like I mentioned, Facebook or Apple, or big financial institutions like JP Morgan, they're moving towards this. And so the consumer applications and technology we'll be using in the future, normal folks that think maybe crypto is a scam or don't have any use for it, are going to be using a lot of that underlying technology in the future. And so, you know, instead of having a Zoom work meeting, you know, we'll be able to have a board meeting in a virtual office in the metaverse. And I think that will also allow us to reconnect again. I think COVID got in the way, and, you know, as much as it is nice to still connect with people, somewhat connect people with Zoom, I think having the metaverse and the virtual reality will help us actually connect more, compared to what some people think it might create more shut-ins. I think it's the opposite. And I think with more of the sensory technology that's being formed right now, I think Facebook was working on sensing gloves, virtual reality gloves. You can actually physically hold things, like in the book and the movie Ready Player Me. I think that's going to be able to connect humanity a lot more. And so there's a lot of great stuff coming ahead for Sandbox, Decentraland, these metaverses that really have a blockchain foundation. So the idea of digital scarcity and actual ownership in the digital world will be a reality.
Wow, man, that's really cool. You had mentioned law offices, real estate offices, you know, just taking up space and you know, mingling with people in town squares. I think I'm really excited to see what type of environment that creates. I mean, you've seen the Oculus goggles, right? Other goggles, and I believe these seem to enhance those experiences, right? Buddies were joking that, you know, during the pandemic, the ones who had the Oculus goggles would have like wine nights or whiskey nights where they all just kind of hang out, you know, in virtual reality and from the
Virtual cigars, virtual
yeah,
whiskey.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really mind-boggling. So I mean, it's gained so much notoriety, right? It's gained so much influence, but in these days, you know, I try to follow some ESG stocks. You see what folks are trying to do on the environmental side, right? Everyone's pledging to go carbon neutral. People are trying to be more mindful of the carbon footprint. Now, what are the environmental concerns that go around the crypto industry? Because I watched a video this morning actually that said that I believe it was like what it takes to create one Bitcoin is like driving 500 miles in your car or something like that, driving around. And so there's some environmental concerns around that. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard to add a quantitative value to a lot of those studies. A lot of those studies could be done by various special interest groups that might have their own agenda at the end of the day. But I do appreciate ESG. I think the movement to cut down on carbon emissions in the corporate world and to move the corporate world in a more energy sustainable way is going to be a good thing. I think when it comes to the energy debate in cryptocurrency, I think a lot of it is hyped up and overblown. I totally understand the environmental concerns. Mining could use energy that is based on coal or energy that is based on oil or petrol. And, you know, a lot of the debate when it comes to oil production has been in the news lately when it comes to the war in Ukraine. buying oil from various countries. And the way I look at it is, yes, there will be, for now, until we move into a more sustainable energy future, some carbon emissions. That's those same carbon emissions are happening when it comes to, I don't want to pick on any groups, but like, let's say ESG groups or special interest groups taking a private jet to an event, or a climate change conference like the UN had recently, causing a stir when it comes to carbon emissions. And so you're not going to get out of carbon emissions, but there are going to be wise ways to get around it. And I think the clean technology revolution that's happening right now, we're inevitably going to head that way. I don't think it's ever going to go back. And I think, why not? I like Elon Musk's view on this, and that if we can have a energy independent future where we're not relying on dirty oils or dirty fossil fuels, but clean tech, why not? It's just going to give us more national security and more benefit to folks in the middle of America that can, create their own energy and utilize that energy in the power grid. I think the same environmental concerns could be said about the US dollar. I don't want to pick on the government or the US dollar itself, but if you look at the environmental impact of some of those policies, they're just as big when it comes to fiat. I think if mining can move to energy independence and not rely so much on fossil fuels, obviously is going to be a good thing. We're heading in that way, inevitably. So like I said, I think it's overblown a little bit, but they do have a concern. Kathy Woods's ARC investment firm did a good report recently about how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are actually going to be able to help an energy independent future, utilizing smart grids and mining and creating energy off of mining as well, and rechanneling that energy from it into different resources like powering a car or a house. And so that's going to, thankfully, private enterprise is heading that way. And that's a lot of the way that that things are going to be coming inevitably, is that if it's not just the government pushing for it, but also private industry sees that it's after a risk benefit analysis would be better to have clean tech at the end of the day. So we're slowly moving there, and Bitcoin and other currencies are becoming environmentally friendly as the months go on, heading into a clean energy future. I actually wanted to touch on something that you had previously mentioned with property rights and Oculus and such. Oculus is a great VR goggle platform and device. I think when it comes to wearables, that's going to be another area where the blockchain and crypto and NFTs are going to be able to work with those devices really well. There's a firm, there's a couple actually startups right now that are utilizing eye contact technology as a smart device, as a wearable. Google had the glasses, didn't work out that well, but they're coming back to it again. Apple is working on a VR set like Oculus, as well as glasses, Apple augmented reality glasses. And so the same way that you wonder about virtual plots of land and such, augmented reality is also going to make a big play in blockchain. It actually is already making a big play in the real estate industry. I know you personally use a couple augmented reality services for listings, real estate listings and such. And so the blockchain compatibility with AR is going to be revolutionary. You're going to be able to buy and utilize augmented reality layers on top of our own reality. And so, for instance, we talked about property rights. In the real property world, those who have either had property law courses or a real estate course would know, you own the air above your land and you own a certain amount of the land underneath your real property. And when it comes to augmented reality layers and virtual reality layers on top of our physical world, who owns those layers? That's the next big debate I think we're going to have. When you are buying augmented reality, a layer of augmented reality over, for instance, the Apple headquarters or the Meta headquarters, since they own that property, those companies, are they going to own that augmented reality and virtual reality layer above their properties as well? Is that going to be a proprietary technology where people can still retain private control? Like you can go and buy a .com domain of something that's not related to you, let's say a famous name, for instance, or a famous slogan or what may you, and you own that .com domain. That company, it would have to buy it from you. And so it's going to be interesting to see the intersection of wearables and that and symbiosis, because I think it's going to take a while. And like I said, it's not legal opinion, it's not financial advice, but I think it's going to take a while for courts to view augmented reality and virtual reality layers above the physical world as being owned by that real property owner. I think the intersection of wearables and humanity is going to have to really commingle. I think symbiosis is going to be the next Web 4.0 thing. And I think once you're not able to separate the human from the digital scarcity aspect anymore, I think that's when courts are going to start waking up more to different augmented reality layers and virtual reality layers when it comes to real property and other property. And so it's going to be a really interesting debate over the next 5 to 10 years in this realm.
It's gonna be the big thing, man. It's definitely gonna be, in my opinion, it seems like it's gonna become a household name. And
Yeah.
speaking of the future, my last question to you: what are your thoughts on crypto and real estate, and let's say 5 years, 10 years from now? Anything that
Yeah, I think um, people are going to use the technology without even knowing that they're using the technology. So I think people won't even like, they might have an idea of what blockchain and cryptocurrency is, but I think a lot of the main players in corporate finance and tech are going to utilize this technology in their app builds without consumers even realizing that it's there. I think that the power of smart contracts is going to be humongous. I think, like we previously mentioned, when it comes to county recorder offices, I think blockchain is going to revolutionize that, because you're going to be able to go online. You're going to be able to go and you know, there are databases with certain county clerk offices. It's not universal. It's very hard to navigate. But if we move onto the blockchain, you're going to be able to look up deeds that are recorded. You're going to be able to look up property ownership. You're going to be able to also collateralize mortgages on your home, just like people are doing decentralized finance and yielding returns on staking their decentralized finance coins and some of the companies tied to decentralized finance. You're going to be able to do that yourself with your own home instead of taking a traditional second mortgage out from a finance company that's predatory or might not have your best interests in mind. You're going to be able to be your own boss on that. You're going to be able to collateralize your own house, your own property in the digital world. It's endless what you're going to be able to get in that realm. But I think as we, over the next 3 to 5 years, as companies like properties start, you know, coming out and doing more of these sales of physical houses through a mechanism of NFT sales and cryptocurrency and using that, I think we're going to continue to see more startups coming out and making sure that deeds are recorded through the smart contract, making sure that you're going to have the power to earn more of a yield return on your house in a decentralized finance way. And so it's a great time to be in real estate, I think. It's a great time to be involved in the blockchain industry and cryptocurrencies that are going to really change the way we look at things. I mean, you're going to be able to create a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, and have voting power and have your house be your wallet or your collateral, your digital
Wow.
wallet or your collateral. And so
Wow.
yeah, there's going to be many different uses for it. And what I like most about it is that it's going to give power back to the people. And you can make all the arguments you want for, you know, centralized organizations and decentralized organizations, but I think once we find that sweet spot and hand over more power to you know, homeowners, to folks having a hard time getting a home or recording deeds, or real estate agents trying to thrive in an industry that's ever changing and having historic shortages when it comes to it. I think blockchain and crypto is definitely going to help move that forward and disrupt and continue to bring the industry back to normal, everyday working folks.
Man, that's awesome, Cheyenne. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. This was a really, really exciting episode for me. I was really looking forward to chatting with you. Hands down, the most excited I've been with all my interviews that I've done. So I really appreciate the time, the time that you took to do this. And if folks have more questions for you, they want to pick your brain or just follow you to see what you're doing, how can they connect?
They can shoot me an email. They can text me. They can contact me at my Ethereum address, cheyenne.eth. You can go ahead and feel free to give them my contact info, and continuing to work with startups and advising them when it comes to different compliance strategy or ideas heading forward and utilizing more blockchain. So I'm always around to shoot back and forth ideas, and feel free to give my contact info out. And definitely appreciate you and this conversation. You're doing great stuff. I'm always following you, always seeing the great stuff you're doing on your channel. So appreciate to have more of these combos.
Hey, thank you so much. So guys, yeah, that's Cheyenne, spelled SHAIAN.ETH, and I'll include it in the show notes as well. Cheyenne, thank you again. I really appreciate you, and
Thank
I
you.
can't wait for us to get back on for a second episode once we got some updates.
Sounds good.
All righty. Enjoy your day. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.